Hey everybody, I'm super excited to tell you about these great horned owls that I found nesting in the open space near my house in Denver, Colorado. So it was last winter. I had just gotten my first Sony camera, the a6600, and along with it, the Sony 200-600 f5.6 to 6.3 lens. And I was raring to go to test out this new equipment, so I just went for a walk in the local area near my house. And as I went around with my new camera and lens, I saw the usual birds that I see every winter. There was a chickadee and a rufous-sided towhee. There was a northern flicker here and there, and some mammals as well. Fox squirrels were chattering in the trees. And I saw a magpie sitting on a branch. I was all ready for it, and when it took to the air, I was able to get a sharp in-flight shot. When you're ready for birds and they take off, you can oftentimes get that bird sharp in the frame. I also saw the kingfisher that usually sits in the trees above the river near our house. And then March came along, and in Denver, Colorado, March is actually the snowiest month. So it was a snowy morning, and I went for a walk in an area where I had walked many times before, and all of a sudden, a very large and very silent ghost flew out of nowhere. I was not ready for it, and that's why the shot isn't sharp. But he landed, and I was able to get a couple of shots and get a good view of him, and I could see it was a great horned owl. I had never seen one in this area before. So then, a few days later, I went for a walk in the same area. The snow had mostly melted, and this is what the area looked like as I looked around. So I didn't see anything unusual, and I doubt that you can either. Here's a little bit of a closer view, and a closer view still of what was going to catch my eye in the future. I saw the owl again, here and there, and every time I walked in that area, he seemed to be nearby. On another snowy day, I saw the owl once again, sitting on a branch, basically ignoring me and just staring into the fields. I stood and looked, and all of a sudden, one little fluttering feather caught my eye. So I zoomed in with my lens, and lo and behold, what I saw was another owl sitting still as can be. I zoomed in closer, and there it was, the female great horned owl sitting on the nest. She didn't move, she didn't open her eyes, she just sat silent and still. I went back a few days later. On a sunny day, again the snow had mostly melted, and there she was, still sitting on that same broken down tree stump. She hadn't moved. The male was in the area, and he flew to a spot each time I came by. Then one day, about the middle of April, as I walked through the area, I noticed that the female had moved off the nest. Now, I couldn't see how many, but I did see that there were fluff balls in the area where the female had been sitting. So I checked back on these guys every so often, and one day I finally saw a little owlet sticking his head up to take a view of what was going around. And over the next few weeks, as I watched the nest and the chicks growing, I noticed that it didn't matter if I wore camouflage or not. If I was far away or close, the birds didn't seem to care. They just sat in the nest, and one of them called constantly and chattered with a noisy cry for mom or dad to feed it. And I eventually came to call that one Noisy Ned. Meanwhile, its brother or sister I called Silent Sam, because it just sat there resolute, looking out into space, never making a sound, and it was always just quiet as can be. And the parents, well, the dad was always nearby. I got many glimpses of him just sitting on a tree, staring at me as I would walk through the area. And as May came along, one day I noticed that the nest was empty. Now, great horned owls, just like any bird, can't fly until it's a few weeks old, and so what they do is they can flap their wings and they can climb if there's thick branches and things like that. Well, Noisy Ned was way up above the nest in a group of branches, and Silent Sam was nowhere to be seen. The mother kept a watchful eye, and the father did as well. I could tell the two apart because the male was a lighter shade and a bit smaller, and the female was darker with deep dark stripes along her breast, and she was quite a bit bigger than the male. And then one day, I also saw Silent Sam sitting on a nice branch. Now we're into late May, and they could obviously move around very easily, and each day that I went to check on them, I would find them in a different location. Noisy Ned was usually high up in a tree, and Silent Sam was typically down lower at eye level, and I was able to get various views of the two birds. And then along came May 18th, and I walked in the area, and neither bird was to be seen. The great horned owls had successfully fledged 2 chicks. So it was a super cool experience to see these great horned owls successfully raising 2 chicks, and I felt honored to be part of their lives for that small part of the year. And I never got too close to them. I always photographed from a distance with my 200-600mm lens. I'll check again this spring to see if they decide to nest again in our area. Hopefully they do, and if so, I'll try to bring you another story about it. Thank you as always for listening and watching my videos. I appreciate it, and I hope you love nature just like I do.